Okay, November 29th to order. First on the agenda, we have our student representative, Nicole St. Jean, because Nicole is late for play rehearsal tonight, so we're going to move her right up. And go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you. Okay, so as always, sports are first. For football, although the Pirates lost on Thanksgiving Day, 33-14, it was a very good game. There were a lot of Oxford students there. The band played, the NJROTC was involved, many parents, many students. It was a great day. There was a nice ceremony for Mike. They retired his jersey, and it was in a like a plaque sort of form, kind of like a big picture frame, and they presented it to his family, and Coach Parcells made a nice speech for him, and his brothers served as honorary captains for the game and stuff. So it was a great day. It was good to see everybody come out, and I'm sure hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm out of breath. I ran in here. And then they have made the playoffs, so tomorrow they'll play at Wachusett High School at 5 p.m. versus David Prouty. There is a student fan bus that will be leaving here at 3:45. We share the bus with Sutton since our football team is shared with Sutton, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis, so get here right on time. Don't be late. So we hope to see a lot of Oxford Pirate fans there. I know it's a long way away, but we need the support, and good luck to the boys. Winter sports tryouts have begun. Winter sports include indoor track, boys and girls, and varsity basketball and junior varsity basketball, both boys and girls as well. Tryouts, I know there's boys basketball tryouts tonight, and then all participation forms had to be in, so they'll be going underway, and we'll have some records soon and some game scores and everything. So, and as of today, yearbooks are on sale, $55, which is a great price. Good job, yearbook. Great price, so those are on sale now, so get them while they're cheap because the price goes up as the year goes on. So, the theater department will be putting on the play Pickin' on December 15th, 2010 at 7 p.m. in the Oxford High School auditorium. It's a nice little play about bullying, so it's very appropriate for what's been going on. So we hope to see everyone there. It's a great play. I'm in it. Yay. So everyone come out and show your support. The 84.org participated in the Great American Smokeout. They created a banner asking, what would you do with $3,000? And students could come up and sign what they would do. College, buy a car, save it, go shopping, anything they wanted to write. And then the next day they made another banner saying how that $3,000 is how much money a smoker who smokes a pack a day will spend on cigarettes in a course of a year. So it was kind of like they got to see what $3,000 can get them and what it kind of can't, you know what I'm saying?
So you're the one that gave that information to my wife, because that's all I've been hearing, how much it costs me.
Yeah, see? It costs a lot of money, and I think that it was kind of like a reality check for them.
Mr. Spitz, that's
right here. New Year's resolution, Mr. Spitz, come on. So it was good for students to see kind of like a versus of where they could spend their money wisely, where not. The senior class will be selling Christmas trees and wreaths this Saturday at the middle school parking lot. So come and buy a tree and have a nice Christmas day or holiday day. On December 7th, which is next Tuesday, the Harlem Superstars will be performing here at OHS as a fundraiser for the junior class in the high school auditorium. They're a nice little basketball crew. So they'll be here. That'll be a lot of fun. And the National Honor Society just put on a very successful Sadie Hawkins dance last week. A good time. A lot of kids came, a lot of students, so it was a good time. And they also I was there. We also stood outside of Walmart on Saturday collecting we're making care packages for soldiers overseas. We're working with Harrington Insurance in town. So we stood outside of Walmart and handed out flyers for people to go in and grab items that we need, and we got a lot of money donations, so it was great to get a lot of items that we need, and we'll be putting those baskets together this Saturday. From the Student Council, they will be attending Laser Tag this Saturday, which is a regional activity, good bonding activity for our council, and everyone's really excited. They're also in the planning Santa's Workshop, which is a great time it's mostly towards elementary kids. They come, we have games, crafts, cookies, movies, musical chairs, anything you can think of, we do. And it's a great time for parents to go out Christmas shopping. So elementary parents, look out for the notice. It'll be heading out soon. And our annual turkey run was a huge success. Huge, huge, huge. We beat our goal of last year. We wanted to beat 46. We came up with 53 whole baskets. as well as many extras that were handed out to families in Oxford. So on behalf of the Student Council, I would like to thank everyone who's involved. A lot of student groups were involved, NHS, the ROTC unit, everyone was involved, every department, the police department, the school committee, the whole community came together to make these baskets for families that are in our town that needed help from us. So thank you for all your help. And the Best Buddies student-teacher basketball game was last week. Although the students won, congratulations to students, because I am a student, but if I do say so myself, me and Abby DeWidzik were fabulous coaches for the teacher team. Fabulous. But it was a great fundraiser for the Best Buddies. They're off to a great start, and we'll be having lots of fun activities using what we raised that night. Now my ROTC report. They did the extended color guard for the Thanksgiving game. They have a drill meet on December 11th in Newport, Rhode Island for the Southern New England Drill League. They are working on the care packages with the National Honor Society and Harrington Insurance, what I was talking about before. They're working on it as well. They are helping on Saturday, December 4th at the Operation Graduation Breakfast with Santa. This event is from 9 to 3. There's breakfast with Santa as well as various crafts and games. They will be at the tree lighting on Sunday at 6 p.m. at the bandstand, and when they do the tree lighting, the band will also be playing as well. And like I said before, they helped with the turkey run as well. I think they donated 5 baskets altogether. They had huge baskets, so. And they are partnering with the Oxford Food Pantry to give out food baskets for Christmas on December 16th. The local food pantry, the one behind the community center. And recently, 21 students in the unit shot in the Secretary of the Navy competition. And that's it.
Well, it was excellent.
Thank
you
you.
very much, and good night.
Thanks. Now I gotta run.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Yes.
Next, we have on the agenda the approval of minutes from November 15th. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Could I have a second to that motion?
Second.
We put those to vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Peter?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you very much. Did not have an executive session that night, so that is it on those. Next, we have the fiscal year 12 budget discussion. Mr. Himmelberger.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. We are at the beginning of what will be a very difficult budget cycle. Although the timeline doesn't change year to year, certainly the events and external factors that cause these budgets to be difficult has not led up. For those of us, I believe Mrs. Ennis and Mr. Peterson were at the conference a couple of weeks ago, and we listened to Mike Widmer, who is the guru of the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, and a very astute gentleman who really, in a very unbiased way, portrays the real story. And he was asked, how do you plan for next year? And this was, again, 3 weeks ago. It was just after the election, and he said that he would plan for a 10% reduction in Chapter 70 funding. And I'll let Mr. Matthew get into the details, but 10% would be a terrific dilemma for us, because it would require some cutbacks and some dismantling of what we have. Now, the happier news that he quickly jumped to was that September and October's revenue receipts were above benchmark, and that if that did in fact continue for the balance of the year, that he felt that a 5% reduction was probably what was going to have to take place in order for the state to balance its budget. And there was also pretty much of a unanimous statement that fiscal year 12, which is our 2011-2012 school year, will be the most difficult of the previous 5, as we started to face the ramifications of our recession and economic downturn, that really started in '08 and has only gotten worse. The state revenue is sometimes the last to be hit, but it's also the last one to return to normal. And so that's what we are faced with for FY12. So it will be a challenging time. I think Mrs. Ennis had requested, and I think it's a good idea, to have an open forum with other boards in town. I think it's certainly, we should educate everybody that it will be a difficult and very challenging budget to arrive at. It will be a challenging process for all of us to go through. And we'll have to really keep our ear to the ground as we get into the state, as the state crafts the state budget as well. There will be a couple of issues that will not help us. One is the ARA funding, which was February of 2009, that President Obama signed into law. The Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, that funding is gone with very little left that the governor controls. And we are looking at no help from the federal government. At least it appears that there will be no help for FY12. So it will really come down to the ability of the state and the local districts to make ends meet, and it will be a challenging year. Mr. Matthew I'll let Mr. Matthew fill you in on the timeline. We have already started the cycle, and we do have some timelines to mesh with the town, and we are in the process of identifying the needs of the district with that balancing act of we probably won't be able to fill them, but we want to be able to advocate for them so that everybody knows what is at stake and what will be the important decisions as we go forward. So I'd like to turn it over, if I could, to Mr. Matthew
Right ahead.
to continue with maybe some more details.
Thank you. At the last meeting, I'd passed out an operational budget's revenue sheet in your packets. And I think that's the important piece that we want to alert you to and to have you guys take a look at as we go forward through the process. As Mr. Himmelberger has indicated, we've started the FY12 budget process already in terms of reviewing personnel and personnel requests in the first pass and the second pass looking at operational expense budgets. The key piece, I think, in the revenue numbers that I had passed out at the last meeting is that for FY12, we are looking at a reduction in available revenues from known sources at this point in time, even before a potential cut in Chapter 70 or in the local unrestricted general government aid that the town receives. We are losing the money, as Mr. Himmelberger indicated, from the ARA grants, the Ed Jobs bill that has helped us this year, as well as some changes in what we are able to bring in on a local basis to our sped tuitioned-in programs. So, you know, starting off the year looking at approximately $350,000 less in revenue just from the get-go, even before any reductions, is obviously a difficult place to look at. So I think engaging the town early and often will be extremely critical for us during this budget season. We'll be bringing forward the total FY12 budget request I think we're planning for the second meeting in January. And if there are any concerns about that particular timeline, I think we're still early enough in the game that we can look at that if the committee has any concerns. If not, the second piece of the FY12 budget is regarding the memo I included in your packets for this evening, and that is what I'll call the ancillary accounts to our operating budget, the Medicaid billing, the crossing guards, and a critical piece, of course, transportation. We do need to pass these numbers in. Historically, this has been provided to the town in this time frame, so we'd like to have the committee go ahead, if they're comfortable, and approve this recommendation to the town. The total budget that we're requesting between those three accounts is $1,100,616. This does include the planned continued use of an 11th bus, plus the expected increases in managing our own local fleet of vehicles. The need for an 11th bus is still something that is under discussion with our transportation provider. We all remember the issues that came up at the beginning part of this year. And I'm not sure, based on the ridership numbers, if an 11th bus is truly justified for next year, especially in light of the transportation policies that we'll be talking about a little bit later. So we want to obviously include the money if indeed it's needed, but it's my sincere hope that we'll be able to take that 11th bus off, although that certainly is not a guarantee to you that I.
What will that do to the cost we're looking at?
The cost of the 11th bus is approximately $52,800. And that obviously provides the majority of the increase for next year, as well as some increased potential expenses for repairs as our fleet gets older and with more miles.
Any questions from the committee? Mrs. DeWitzik?
Going back and forth, the 10% reduction in the Chapter 70, off the top of your head, what are we looking at? What's that figure come? Because you had the 350 on the grants.
Yeah. Our Chapter 70 for FY11 is $9,390,000.
90,000.
So a 10% reduction would be $939,000. Now, to put that into context, when cuts to Chapter 70 are talked about, usually those cuts are not given to what are called foundation budget districts, and Oxford is a foundation budget. We are at the bare minimum amount that the state requires and can provide to us. So we have none of the extras that many other communities do have. So as a result, when these cuts do come, and that's why we've been so fortunate in receiving SFSF money to backfill to get to that foundation budget the last couple of years. So I'm not saying that we will not be reduced, of course,
Right.
but I'm saying I think there's less likelihood of us having as significant an impact as a straight 10% from that number. So.
Go
The
ahead.
other thing, the figures for the transportation, this is our transportation and Durham?
Yes.
Is that's both? And as far as the 11th bus, I know we're going to be talking, I was going to ask the chairman if we could put that bus policy. I know it's been out for a month and we haven't really gotten anything, so I think I would like to just ask our policy, if it's, our committee, if it stands as it is, and we can discuss it and go forth on that. But it would make sense at least to give the town that figure now in case we can't.
Exactly.
That would be ridiculous. So I would have no problem motioning for that.
Second.
figure.
Can we put that to vote, please?
Yes,
Yes.
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 thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
Just along the lines that Mr. Himmelberger was saying, the plus side of what they talked about at the Cape and what we've been talking about was, quote, like he said, the state is the last to deplete, but the last to rebound. Unfortunately, there's a little caveat to that this year. After elections, September and October figures were up for state revenues because the booze and sales tax increase kicked in. Those returns finally came in, and revenue was able to project and give you more money for September and October. But November's revenues are starting to taper off, and come January 1st, when the repeal of the booze tax takes effect, there will be a significant downside for state revenues coming in. And we've already at work starting to see that semi-trickle-down effect where people are preparing for it with the holidays coming up. There will be a little bit of an increase, but come January 1st, it isn't a matter of just lack of sales because the holidays are over with. It's simply going to disappear. And so revenues are going to be down the first quarter more than they anticipated. So as far as any expectation, that 10% reduction is pretty much going to be factual, it looks like, with the revenues that are coming in.
Thank you.
So that's just a little bit forewarning, heads up that there's really nothing going to be coming in major from the state.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it's going to be a big ouch this time around for F12.
Mr. Himmelberger? You all set with that?
I believe so, yes. Thank you.
So again, unless there are any concerns about the timeline, the next time we'll be talking FY12 budget will be the second meeting in January, where we'll present our full operational request.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthew. We appreciate that update. Next on the agenda, we have the transportation review. Mr. Himmelberger.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. To Mrs. DeWitzik's point, I didn't bring copies, but I just wanted to at least have a discussion, or at least start a discussion now, because obviously Mr. Matthew will need to know this as we plan for next year. And just to give a brief history, because I don't go back that many years, but, you know, the committee has a very workable transportation policy in place. I think what has happened, certainly over the years, as the economy has stalled, and as requests have come in for some help in terms of number of stops and special requests for multiple pickup and multiple drop-offs, that we, as a district, have tried to comply as best as we can, knowing that some folks really needed that additional support from our transportation. What we saw most recently this past fall, along with a myriad of issues that Durham is correcting, is that we had some as well, when we started to look at the total number of exceptions. It became a huge number, and not just an exception for every Friday. We had multiple requests because people were working 2 part-time jobs, or because there was a caregiver or babysitting that needed to be factored in, that we tried to really meet everybody's request. And so we ended up with many, many types of exceptions. In some cases, 2 or 3 different pickups in the morning and several in the afternoon for the same student. Obviously, we cannot continue to do that. Now, we think that a large piece of that, and again, I will expect Mr. Matthew to correct me, I would think that a large piece of that will self-correct as the routing becomes solidified using the routing software. And Durham should have a much better handle on making sure that our routes are maximized, that our routes are utilized efficiently, as well as safety for all of our students. But I think what we wanted to do was at least have a preliminary discussion so that we can let everybody know that for next year they may have to change their plans, or they may have to adjust their own individual family calendars and transportation, because the district simply cannot, given the limitations of both time and extra buses, be able to continue to meet every single one of these. So it's a 2-part discussion. One would be, if we want to adhere to the policy, which I think is a good one, then we will let that get out so that everyone understands the limitations of what the district can provide. And 2, I think there's a second part of that, which is number of stops. And we have sometimes, in some cases, where if it's an elderly relative watching a young child get to the bus, that the ordinary logical bus stop was moved to accommodate that. And so in some cases, we have extra stops added in, which again makes for a much more difficult challenge for our drivers to make the routes on time and to provide safe transportation. And I guess in lieu of the fact that I didn't have a chance to make copies, I just wanted to read the policy if that's okay with.
Go right ahead.
With the chair, just so that folks know that this is where we are, our starting and ending point. The school committee has established that elementary school children who are not regular bus pupils will not be permitted to travel on school buses, nor will regular bus pupils be allowed to ride alternate buses or to get off the bus anywhere other than their regular bus stops. Exceptions to this policy will be considered on an individual basis for a single alternate stop on a long-term, consistent daily basis. Such requests must be presented in writing to the principal. Sudden emergencies will be handled as they arise. Pupils attending meetings or visiting friends going to parties must find other means of arriving at their destination. If regular bus pupils wish to be excused from riding home on the bus, they must present a note requesting that permission. And I think both Mr. Matthew and I think that that's a very sound policy and certainly addresses the needs. And I think where we started to get off track was the exceptions. And we tried to do the right thing, and, you know, what is one good deed becomes past practice immediately. And you know, there has been a lot of, well, you do this for a friend of mine across town, why can't you do it for me? And that puts all of us in a very difficult position. So I think that certainly, I believe it's worded properly, and I believe that it's a sound policy, and I think that we would certainly, together with Durham, hope that our next back to school, once those routes are configured, will take away a lot of the need for exceptions, because I think we'll be in far better shape to provide the appropriate transportation for everybody who deserves it. And we also have a student transportation policy that is very straightforward, that comes right from the Mass General laws and the DOE, that students will be entitled to transportation to and from school at the expense of the public schools when such transportation conforms with the applicable provisions of the Mass General laws. And the state requirement tells that every public school district must provide transportation for kindergarten through grade 6 up to outside of 2 miles. And obviously, due to road configuration and safety reasons and topography, we do a lot more than that because it's the right thing to do. Exceptions to these guidelines may be made at the discretion of the superintendent. This will apply particularly to any student who must travel in a hazardous area to and from school. These students will be transported regardless of the mileage limits listed. So I just wanted to let the committee know that I and Mr. Matthew believe that we have a sound policy in place, and that the factors that contributed to some of the issues that we have confronted now, and really things have settled into, do I dare say, routine for the year. And yes, some of them were exacerbated by the reconfiguration, and some of them were, we didn't know what we didn't know, but a fair amount of them were Durham. And I think that Mr. Matthew has done a terrific job of holding Durham's feet to the fire, and that I would expect that we will have a much better time of it as we go forward. I think the key, though, is to make sure that if the policies, if the committee is still happy with the way the policies are, then it would be up to us to make sure that we get that word out to everybody, so that that our own families can make the plans to make sure that their students get to and from school safely every day.
All right. I just have one comment, Mr. Peterson, and we'll be happy to let you speak. As a result of these additional pickups that we've been doing this past year, is this one of the requirements for that 11th bus? Is this what's prompted the need for that, because it slowed the system down to the point where we needed that 11th bus in order to get our children home on time?
I'm not sure that it's completely the reason that we need the 11th bus, or felt the need to have the 11th bus available for this particular year, but it's a contributing factor, that's for sure. That's for sure. If I may.
Go right ahead.
I would like a little clarification on the elementary school transportation policy, where we say a single alternate stop on a long-term, consistent daily basis. A lawyer would read this and, being able to argue both sides of the coin, would say, well, that means any different stop 5 days a week, or that means 5 different stops any day of the week. And I'm not sure what the committee's intention was, or if you could reaffirm your intention so that we could make it clear to everybody exactly, is it, you can go to grandma's house, but it has to be 5 days a week, or you can go to grandma's house every Thursday, essentially is the question.
Well, I think what we need to do with that is probably print the policy again for the committee. Mrs. DeWitzik has requested that it be put on the agenda. We certainly should review it, come up with a policy. I don't want to do that tonight because I want people to have a chance to think about it. And certainly, Mrs. DeWitzik is on the policy committee and has been very involved with doing this. So I think between all of us at the next, I can put it on the next agenda. It's really not a topic that's going to take a long time to discuss because we do have a solid policy in place, but it needs a few revisions maybe. So we will certainly do that, and I'll make sure it does get on the next agenda, if we could just make sure that the policy is in the baskets of everybody.
The only other big question that would have an impact in terms of budgeting for next year's transportation are the distances that we will transport. Again, when you get the copies, you'll see that it's all laid out for kindergarten students, grades 1 to 4, grades 5 to 8, and 9 to 12. And once that is reaffirmed by the committee, I'll be able to go to Durham and say, okay, anybody that falls at the high school level, for example, within 2 miles, door to door, will be excluded from transportation services. And that hopefully will help us to, create a more streamlined, again, and whatever that mileage policy is, if the committee obviously wants to change it, they can, but that's what's written right now.
All right, Mr. Peterson, you had a comment? First,
Yeah,
then we'll get
back
to you.
to your question as far as the days of the week, how many times they're allowed to, et cetera. I'm probably the only one left looking around the table that was on the original busing committee, and still am, that put that policy together. And I went back and looked at it too after you questioned it. And the wording of that, the intent of the busing committee and the committee at the time, which none of the school committees existing either, was not that you could take and go to a different stop every single night of the week. The stop was meant for grandma taking care of you were picked up at your normal stop in the morning at home or wherever your bus stop is, but because people couldn't get home to pick their child up at 2 in the afternoon or something, it was meant to go to a babysitter or to a grandma's or something of that nature. Some actually went to childhood centers and things as well. We had quite a few, like Grace and everybody in town at that point in time, and some even went the afternoon session there. Kindergarten kids even were dropped off for an afternoon session like at Grace or something. Or they went to Grace in the morning and then came to school in the afternoon when we only had a half-day kindergarten, as an example. I won't belabor it. And I think that wording needs to be tightened up and clarified, because as I'm listening to this, we're on our 4th superintendent since that was drafted, and the liberties are up to the superintendent, and an awful lot of precedents have been set trying to accommodate people. And we also used to bus a kindergarten child right from the door. Those also got changed, because if a kindergarten child can ride with or walk to a bus stop where there are older kids to monitor them, the only exception was like up on Dulge Court, as an example. There was one child at the end of the court, a kindergarten child, that we went up to pick up and could barely make the bus turn around up there, and these buses are even bigger now. So we've stopped, when we cut from the 20 buses back to the 10 over the 20 years I've been on, some of these areas they have to walk down to because we cannot get a bus up into them, as an example, either. And they've tried to accommodate that in certain instances. Pat and I worked on one up on Fort Hill to try to get, that child was the only one left way up in the woods. So there are some exceptions, but leaving the wording as is, total discretion, I guess I have to trust the superintendents. I've worked with all four of them, and they know the family and where the areas are. But that's where the problem has come from, as far as I can see, is in the wording of that, allowing, and I know of two cases where one child went 2 days to one spot, 2 days to another spot. We can't accommodate that. It's just impossible. And to the 11th bus, it isn't necessarily because of the reconfiguration of schools. Certain pockets have really now become overloaded with children that we didn't have. It was more evenly dispersed. So some areas, some bus routes, we're traveling with too many kids on it, and it's a wasted, it's unfortunately, I guess I can't say it that way. They're entitled to transportation, so we had to make some other arrangements, but these buses are not full, the extra bus. They're only picking up a few kids to alleviate the state law of only X amount of students being left on that one bus because it was overcrowded, okay?
Very good.
So that bus is being kind of jockeyed around, from my understanding, talking to the drivers and to the transportation Durham. I have one other question, though. This year, I don't know who made the decision, I don't really care, Mr. Matthew, if it was you or what. My understanding is we have some special ed students on the bus, on regular transportation. Is that the case, with a monitor also traveling on the bus? I guess I'll look into that with you later. Is that more cost-effective at this point in time, or is it extra costs? I'm looking at some of these other costs on here. I have questions on, like travel and other expenses and some things that I'll talk to you later in the week on, I guess, okay?
But isn't that part of each individual student's IEP?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right, but
Yeah, they're allowed that preference as part of their IEP.
as far as a regular bus versus our 2 or 3 that we are traveling with, a smaller vehicle?
Mr. Hillenberg?
Just for a clarification, yes, some special education students on an IEP have related services that require individualized transportation, and where possible, because the law that governs special education is to offer free and appropriate in the least restrictive environment. And so some families did approve to have their child ride regular bus, and in some cases with monitors. I think that Mr. Matthew can give you an accounting of the dollars and cents, but certainly, we want to follow the law.
I'm not questioning that, and I understand the special ed has the rights too, but I guess I'm questioning maybe the safety of all, the special ed student too, and the parents have signed off on this. I guess that's fine, because this is the first year in the 20 years that I've been on that we've gone this direction, is all I'm asking the
Yeah,
committee.
and one of the things I just want to
Clarification.
point out to you, Mr. Peterson, was that Mr. Himmelberg and I discussed this because it was brought to my attention as well. And I think what's really important here is that the way he presented it to me after we finished the discussion is that they're looking at each student on an individual basis.
That's fine.
And the ones that can physically handle being part of a regular school pickup and delivery are being done, that's what we're required to do by law.
I understand that.
So I think that it's very important that we do mainstream these students and they become part of the school community, and that's how some of these students are being dealt with. And I think it's up to the superintendent, really, in the special ed department, to look at each student individually to see if they can handle that or not, and go with that.
Yeah,
But-
and
Again, I don't have any problem with that. I just think the public should know it too, because there's been a change
Right.
as far as busing, who's on the buses, et cetera, with their students and their child, as well as the special ed. And I just wanted to make sure the special ed people had signed off on it, et cetera, for the transportation reasons.
They have.
Right. And just to wrap it up, I mean, obviously, when you do change something, it becomes in sometimes difficult to understand and sometimes difficult to accept. This was one particular instance, and I remember talking to Mrs. DeWitzik. It was one particular instance where you really don't have the leeway of explaining regarding
Right.
how you do transport some children, because the kids do have their own rights that we need to protect. Certainly, I can unequivocally say nobody was forced to do it, and certainly it was, I think, with great discretion, but strict interpretations, and for Mr. Matthew to say, hey, wait a minute, dollars and cents wise, this wasn't making sense. And so, but I do think that now folks know that we only have the students' best interests at heart, and physically, emotionally, and however, if a student is ready, then they should ride. And obviously, that's a delicate situation and a delicate decision that's managed in team meetings, and I think that everybody has benefited by it.
Great. Mrs. DeWitzik, you had a point earlier, and did we just kind of,
No, yes, I do, but no,
Okay.
I didn't cover. I think with the policy, Mr. Himmelberger and I have talked about as the last time we brought this up, and you sent it back to the Policy Review Committee, there was some discussion that some people wanted to add something, but this is the first I heard. I mean, I didn't get anything back, so I guess we're going to talk about it here, so that's okay. I guess I'm a little perplexed that there are, as we know, there's over 200 exceptions to that policy. And, yeah, and even more, thank you. That policy is 10 years old. It wasn't developed overnight. So I'm more curious that, are there other policies that we just aren't following? To say to us, is this what you want to do? It's the policy. We don't really have to say right now, hey, I think is what we should do. It's there until we fix it or I change it, really.
Right.
So I think we have to look at this and say, how do we get in here? And also, because the policy was there, it's been there, and I know that's something that we've done. I think to look at it, I remember the meeting when it was established. That's kind of dating me.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah. And I do remember it was for the case was made that, you picked up on Main Street and you dropped off on Smith Street or something every day. It wasn't Monday this, Tuesday that, because you can't do that on a bus. You can't know that, and it's not fair, and it's kind of a little inadequate for the child who wants to go to Janie's house on Friday and he's like, no, but if you had a babysitter thing. So I'm a little concerned about the 200 exceptions, and I'm concerned that the policy was there and just was read and said, yeah, but we'll keep making exceptions. That kind of bothers me more than the fact that we need to vote again to say, yes, we really do want it. Because I know we go through the policies and we kind of update them and say, yes, we've taken a little time off, but we are gathering steam again. But I haven't heard from anybody. I know the question was, I think we might want to add, and I just said to Mrs. Coonan, we haven't heard anything. I know Mrs. Ennis had mentioned something, but I haven't heard from her. So I said to you, I think it's time we just go and say, update it, yes. I don't know what else we can do on it, but this is the first I've heard of some
well, I think you're
things.
right. I think the whole point, Mrs. DeWitzik, was that I think the policy is good. And if we had just followed the policy from day one when it was established 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having this discussion tonight, and these exceptions wouldn't be in place. But as it was pointed out with Mr. Peterson, he's worked with 4 superintendents, and 3 of them during that 10 years.
Oh, yeah, it didn't happen overnight.
It didn't happen overnight. So
Absolutely
we've
not.
had a
It's
lot of
scary.
people layering on to this.
And we're not aware of those
And we're not
200
aware of them until
exceptions
we're,
that
you know.
they've made, okay?
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. Himmelberger.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. I just wanted to clarify for Mrs. DeWitzik, I certainly did not mean to circumvent the subcommittee on policy. I was, I guess, looking for help or affirmation from the committee, because I do think it's a very good policy. And it was just that the evolution over time had eroded, I think, the original intent. And so that's where we found ourselves walking that fine line.
I don't think it needs a confirmation, because to Mrs. DeWitzik's point, if we just follow the policy, it's a pretty well-written policy when they did it 10 years ago. What I think we need to Mr. Matthews' point, is that there's a little blurb in there that could be, your opinion could be different than mine and Mr. Peterson. So I think what we need to do with that policy is not change the policy, because it's probably a very appropriate policy. But just to make sure that we close any little loopholes in that policy so that it can't be interpreted differently over the coming years as these plans are put in place for the bus routes. Mrs. Coonan?
And then I think once that happens, I think we have to get it out and get it to the parents sooner versus later. So if I have a child that's going to be coming next school year, I've got 6 months or 8 months or 9 months to plan, okay, I can't do this anymore. how am I gonna work this out? Versus something that they get over the summer where you have 4 weeks. So I think time is kind of the essence with that as well.
Very good. Mr. Peterson?
We did have a major meeting, which Mr. Tatro ran, was third business manager removed also at the middle school. And again, I don't want to belabor this, but I reiterate, the laws have changed even since I helped establish the policy, especially with special ed, and the parents aren't aware of their rights, our rights, and the one sentence is very loose in there that I would like tightened up royally.
And I think we can. And I think, with the help of the policy committee, who's done
Okay.
an exceptional job for us on revising some of these outdated policies, we can do that. So if we could, please make a note that we'll put that on the next agenda as well. Even though December 13th is going to be a busy one, I would like to get that in and done so that we can have people make plans, and everybody knows what to do with the budget. Okay? Could we move on to OMS renovations? Mr. Himmelberger, it's you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spitz. As everyone knows, and I believe you did receive that telephone-size book of the renovations study by the engineering company, RDK. The middle school was targeted by the School Building Authority back in the fall of 2007 on a very short list of schools that qualified for state grant funding to help in the repairs and renovations to that building. The town has certainly appropriated over the years significant money to help that building be maintained. Now we are running out of time, I think, from SBA's point of view, and they're going to want us to either take action or they will take us off the list. So as I explained to our town manager, Mr. Zaneski, I just wanted to do my job to explain to the committee and also to the town that there was significant money on the table if we do want to take advantage of it. If we don't, that would be up to the town at town meeting. I think the biggest question that we have right now is we're looking at upgrading the HVAC system. We're looking at a new roof and also to replace windows, doors, and floors in that building. The question is, can all of that be done in an April to October timeframe that does not upset the educational process? And I think what I'd like to do is maybe at a meeting in January is to bring Dan Wall, who is the engineer in charge of this project from RDK's perspective, to come and talk to the committee and say, here's what we are up against. Yes, it can be done, or no, it can't. And if it can't, then how do we do it? And then it becomes a question for the town. Is it worth to spend the money? The project roughly is a $5 million project, of which somewhere over half of that money would be picked up by the state, and somewhere between $2 to $2.3 million would be the town's share. There are some pretty good reasons to do it now, even though times are tough, and that is, one, bonding rates are at an all-time low, so we could borrow the money very cheaply, and a lot of very high-quality contractors are looking for work. So, and it's going to come down to pay me now or pay me later. Do we want to renovate the building, which the town has supported over the last several years? New boiler, fire alarm system, upgrading the auditorium and the gym. And if we don't get that roof and everything else done, then we're going to probably in 10 years be looking, or less, looking at another building, which I think would be a lot more money than somewhere in the excess of $2 million.
My point in this, if we could, is I agree. This should be part of our January meeting that we've already, probably the second meeting in January when we're discussing the budget. But what I would like you to do for me prior to that meeting is to have for the committee a breakdown as to everything that was found and what each individual line is going to cost the town. I would also like this RDK Engineering to be here to present, as well as to tell us prioritize it and say, if you don't do this, like say a new roof, this will be the result. So that maybe we can pick and choose a few of the things to present to the town versus the entire package for $5 million. And I know it all has to be done and replaced, and the committee might decide to do that, to at least present it to the town that way. But I would like them to have the information at least 2 weeks prior to that meeting so that everybody can study it, really get a good idea of what we're talking about, what expenses we're talking about, what each expense will cost, so that going into this meeting, we will have the ability to make intelligent decisions as to what we should present.
We'll plan that for that second meeting in
If we
January as
could.
well?
Yep,
We'll
during
do.
the financial
I'll
one,
contact Dan Wall.
and we can have him.
Okay.
Very good.
Yep.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Mrs. DeWitzik?
I think you've got a great idea. I'm just thinking, which is always dangerous, that information with them here and those questions, obviously, going forth, we want as many town people to know this, because obviously, whatever happens, we have to educate them. Having said that, is it possible to have some type of meeting with just that, instead of tying it into a school committee? I hate to have a special meeting where we can have Tony come and tape it, and have that be able to be available to people later on in the months to just flip on and hear this Q&A and have it go through, because obviously you're talking about a $5 million situation, which really isn't $5 million, and that means they only tie into us, and we know our tape doesn't always run right and sometimes skip. But if we have a good, clear meeting with just that on the table, and then that can be run over and over again as
I
we
like
get
that.
closer to May, then we can really educate people, and they can hear what we're hearing and hear what we're saying, and it's just that. It's just tune in just for that situation. It might be able to be run on Channel 11 also, other than every other week,
Yep.
our school committee. Just a thought that we can educate
No,
everybody
I think
through
it's a great thought. So your thinking paid off.
Yes.
I think that's
Sitting there
great.
thinking.
Why don't we talk about the, and
Just to
plan a
clarify,
special meeting or?
A separate meeting.
A separate meeting.
That would be the agenda.
Just that,
Yep.
just that situation, that's all we're going to talk about, and
Because
really
come
film it
January,
well.
I think that that's a great idea, that we can all probably carve out the time for that. And to Mrs. DeWitzik's point, I think that's exceptional, that we just focus on this one issue, so that we can give it the right amount of time. We can answer any questions that people may have if we do have people in attendance. And I think it's great that they could keep playing that particular meeting over again. So I like that a lot. Thank you. That's a great suggestion.
May even get somebody from SBA to come out as well, then we can get everybody at the
Oh,
table.
that would be-
to
that'd be
give
even better.
all the information.
That would
for
be
the
even
town
better.
people.
Wow.
Yep.
Can you try to work out a date for us to coordinate with those
Yep.
two groups?
Yep.
And then I can get to the committee and we can say, are you available on this date? And let's do this. I like that idea very much. Great.
Okay. Will do.
All right. We do have a little presentation from our subcommittee, which, I'm really looking forward to this December 13th meeting because I hear you guys have worked very, very hard on this and I'm excited to
great
hear your
committee.
results. So take it away.
So just to let everybody know that for the bullying prevention plan, the draft of the bullying and intervention plan will be online after our December 1 meeting, which is Wednesday, when we kind of wrap everything up. And we're looking forward to public comment at our December 13th school committee meeting, at which point I'm hoping all of the committee members will be here to join us.
And just to tag on to that, here's yet another thing for you, Mr. Himmelberger. I think it would be a great idea if we sent a notice home to all parents of all schools that this meeting will be taking place on December 13th. We cordially invite them to attend, but if they cannot attend, to please watch it on TV and forward their suggestions, if they do have any, to us, so that we can, make changes to it. I mean, we really want to put together something that everyone feels comfortable with. And I think that's really important. And really, this committee has worked exceptionally hard to put this together. It's a great group with a great group of parents and administrators that are part of this, as well as Mrs. Ennis and Mrs. Coonan. And I really want it publicized. I really want people to be aware that this is happening on the 13th of December. And that really will be our only focus for that meeting. I mean, I don't plan to put really anything else on this agenda because of its importance. And we want to make sure that we do have this into the state prior to our cutoff date, which is the 30th of December, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And take it from there.
We can do that.
Okay?
Yep.
Can we do that,
Yep,
please?
we can do that.
All right, very good. Could we hear from our superintendent, even though I think we've probably heard enough from you tonight?
I'll be brief.
Okay.
As many folks know, we had a couple of major events over the last 2 weeks, and kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum, but in both particular cases, I couldn't be more proud to be your superintendent. One of them was the unfortunate sudden death of one of our football players. To see our students and faculty and coaches handle that with the dignity and the compassion that they did was truly amazing. And I want to let everyone know that we all should be proud of our staff and students. And the other, which was on a much happier note, was the turkey run, which, a lot of times we only hear the negative things that go on. We only hear what is bad. We only see or believe on the lowest of the lows issues, and this was a particular case where the entire faculty of the high school came together and supported this, and student council, and to be able to come up with that much food was amazing. And I do want to say thanks to Mrs. Spitz, because this was the third annual. The need certainly has continued to grow. The media certainly has highlighted the fact that food pantries are empty and that giving is way down. And this was a terrific way for our students to give back to those in need. So very, very impressed with how we have handled a lot of things over the last couple of weeks. The only other thing I have, actually the only two small things I have, one is that I handed out to you a field trip permission slip. Mrs. Hackett has the opportunity, and Mrs. Greeno, to take some of our middle school girls who are interested in leadership and athletics to Providence College for their 4th annual Project Providence workshops. And it looks like it's a terrific day. It's Wednesday, December 22nd. The beauty of it is that Providence College picks up the entire tab for our middle school girls. And the only problem is Mrs. Hackett remembered at the last minute her geography, that Providence is indeed in Rhode Island, not in Massachusetts, even though it's a pretty quick hop and a skip. So if there are any questions from the committee regarding this, you can see the field trip permission slip. It sounds like a terrific opportunity for some of our young ladies at the middle school, and they will be back by 3:30. They also get to see a women's basketball game at Providence. So, but Mrs. Hackett would like me to ask the committee's approval for that trip coming up on Wednesday, December 22nd.
Any questions from the committee? If not, could we entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, could we put that to vote, please?
Yes.
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 And I also vote yes. She's all set with that.
Thank you very much. And the last thing I have is Mr. Spitz and I were talking last week, and I know we hadn't had a lot of meetings over the last couple of months because of the way the calendar fell, but I did enclose in your packet just an update, which was going to be a couple of bullets and then ran a little bit longer, but I thought it was good reading. And I would like to try and do this maybe on a more regular, frequent basis so that the committee does understand, and at least if we don't connect face-to-face, that we all feel that we have a semblance and a sense of what's going on within the district. So I will try and do that probably on an every other week basis, get that to the committee. And I believe that is all I have.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Matthew?
In your packets was an update for the FY11 finances. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions, but, the message has not changed much. It's a tight year. It continues to be a tight year. With the onset of winter, we hope for many 60 and 50-degree days throughout December, January, and February. Not because we love flowers, although there's nothing wrong with flowers, but simply because we'd like to keep as much of the heating budget as possible. But, stay tuned. We'll continue to monitor the numbers and make sure that we finish on the right side of zero.
Very good. Any questions on this? Everybody good? Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Mrs. DeWitzik?
I just have a couple things. Also, I want to congratulate, I know Nikki told about the Best Buddies, obviously, the basketball game with the students against the teachers. It was really a fabulous night, and I was really proud of the students. I mean, that whole week, we've been proud of them. But the band was there, the NJROTC was there. I mean, the gym was pretty packed. And it was a great game, and the teachers looked like they had a great time, students didn't, and it was one of those really fun nights that you were really glad to participate in. And I really want to congratulate them and all the people who helped them do that, because it was just a really great night. Again, good luck to the football team tomorrow night, and just really hats off to the team and the students and the faculty and everybody. It was a very hard time for us, as long as Mike's family, and we were just saying how courageous they were and how inspiring they were. Unfortunately, a terrible lesson that we have to learn at this time, but just heartfelt for that whole day and that for Thanksgiving. The quick thing I wanted to just throw out is, I know Mr. Himmler had mentioned about the administration hiring range sheet that we've talked about only, and I just wanted to kind of put it out here, also put in our notes. It is my interpretation, or how I remember, that when we established that was simply because when we were hiring new administrators, we meet every other week, so you would have to wait and get to us and say, what about this, whatever. So we set up a range for hiring only. Doesn't lock in them wherever they go, but it's only for the hiring of those positions, so that they don't have to keep coming back to us. They're held by, obviously, policy, because the policy says that's the range. The other part is for any increases, they're held by their own contract, so contractually. So as far as, anything coming up, I was reading, where we're going and how we're doing. I think we already have, really 2 policies set that already help that. One is the hiring range. That's already set. Obviously, if it's outside of that range, then you do have to wait for the school committee. And their increases is held contractually, which is a policy. So if it doesn't fit into there, then they would have to come to us. But I know that we've talked about that form and everything, and I think that doesn't tell where someone goes. It's just when they come in and they can't get to us, and that's for the superintendent to have that leeway. So it's a hiring policy for salaries. It's not where they're going. So I just kind of want to clear that up and put that in the notes, because I think we always go back and think that that says something that it's not. It's a hiring policy range. So I just wanted to really clarify that, because I know it comes up a little bit.
One of the questions I had mentioned on that at the last meeting was in comparison to other districts. And that was one of the biggest things when I looked at that report, that it needs to we need to have new minimums, because of the fact that I think we are substantially lower in many cases for surrounding communities. But at the same time, I really feel that even though it is a contractual thing for the superintendent to deal with pay raises for certain employees that fall in his realm, I also feel that we should probably give some guidelines there too, because I think percentages and everything, I think we should establish pay.
Well, that's in their contracts.
It is.
It's a 3%. After that, he has to come. I mean, that's their
Well,
cap.
I think on a couple of them that I mentioned,
But that's not in the range. That's what I think. If you look at the range, that doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean?
This could be another day, I don't want to.
No, but I just want to, I know it keeps coming up and it keeps floating, so it's like, let's just clear it up and move it on, because it
And I
does. Every
agree.
year it comes up.
I agree.
And I think
I
that
agree.
the range can be looked at just if we know, it's been several years, we haven't hired anybody. You really need to look at it, because we could be like, oh, geez, that's out of date.
Right.
So, yeah, we should look at it, but it doesn't say like, I'm going to use really weird figures. If you're 40,000, I know that's not, but if you're 40,000, you can never get a raise, because that's the top of our hiring. That's the hiring, not the incentive or the raise factor. And every contract that Jay has put together has a 3% cap on it. If someone does superb and the superintendent, which is personnel, wants to give more, then he has to come to us. So I know we kind of look at that range and think the top, that no one can go over it. Yeah, you can go over it, because you have that 3%
Okay.
built in.
All right, great.
So that's all. I just wanted
sounds
to
like a
clarify that,
plan.
because it always comes up, so I
We
just
appreciate
wanted
that.
to put it out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mrs. Coonan.
I have nothing tonight.
Mr. Peterson.
I have nothing tonight.
The only thing I really have is I just want to reiterate what Mrs. DeWitzik touched on eloquently about Thanksgiving Day. I was there, and I'll tell you, I think that the school did an outstanding job with the presentation prior to the game. I was really touched by the whole thing, and I think it was great that Auburn did their little part by taking a knee in respect. The whole thing, I think, was put together very well. I want to thank whoever was involved in that, because it really made me proud to be from Oxford, that we took the time to do this for the family. And I think everyone feels the same way. It was just a sad day, and this might have made them feel just a little bit better. So I really appreciate the efforts that the school department did with that. So that's really all I have. I'll open the floor for comments. I'll close the floor for comments. As I mentioned on our future meeting dates, December 13th is the anti-bullying committee presentation, which I'm extremely excited about, to hear what they've put together for us. And hopefully, we're going to be better than the state requirements and mandates, because that's kind of what we're looking for here.
You bet.
So again, we'd like that notice to go home if we could, because this really is going to be a big one for us. And I really would like people to attend, and I'd really like people to watch this meeting, because I think it's going to be filled with information for everybody. So that, we're going to have to approve that as well, so that'll be upcoming on future agendas. So that will be happening. I do not have a request for executive session tonight. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second,
Okay, can we put that to a vote, please?
Yes.
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 And I also vote yes, so we are now adjourned, and thank you all very much.